Welcome to Industry Matters. I am Unfiltered, where we talk about what's really shaping our industry. Today, we're diving into a topic that doesn't always get the attention it deserves: the people side of AI. When organizations, including VGM, implement AI, the focus often goes straight to technology, ROI, how we're going to implement this, how our systems work together. But really, the truth is the success of AI depends on people, just much like everything else that we do: how they understand it, how they embrace it, how they use it. Now, Ike is sick, so I don't have my lovely co host with me today, but I do have with me Ann Thomas, VGM's Director of Learning and Development and Emerging Technology Education. Anne works closely with our leaders and teams to prepare them for change, and AI adoption is one of the biggest changes we'll see in the coming years. So I'm excited to have my list of questions for her. And Anne, I just want to welcome you to the show and for this real conversation to happen today.
Thank you for having me. Anytime that I can talk about people and AI all in the same situation, that's a party for me. So I'm excited to be here.
Love it. You've really been able to dive in to this topic. I mean, because how long have you been at VGM?
A little over a year and a half, but I was training school districts on AI since November of 2022 when ChatGPT went public. So
Gotcha. So I know a lot of your time has been spent on this and walking our people through it. And it's definitely been received positively. So I'm excited to dive into that a little bit more today. Let's start with the big picture. Why do you think the people side of AI is often overlooked during implementation or even in a decision to make an investment, whether it's in a process improvement or a system specifically or whatever it might be? Why do you think sometimes it's almost like an afterthought?
I think organizations treat AI kind of like a shiny new gadget and like you plug it in and then magic is just going to happen. But the reality is that AI adoption is 80% people and 20% technology. The tech is the easy part. The hard part is getting humans to trust it and to use it and see it as an ally or an assistant rather than a threat. I think it's easy to focus on the algorithm and kind of forget the attitude. So when it comes to people, if you think about like AI like a coffee machine, if your organization said, "Hey, we've got this coffee machine here for you and it is the best," but it's one of those really state of the art kind of modern, hard to use, complicated coffee machines, and they're like, "It's going to make you the best cup of coffee you've ever had in your life, but we're not going to teach you how to use it." It's probably not going to get used, even though it would make a great cup of coffee. And AI is very much the same thing. I think people's side gets overlooked because it's messy. There's emotions and habits and fears and change management all involved in anything like AI adoption. And tech feels predictable, but humans don't. And so if you skip that human element, I think you end up with like really expensive tools that aren't being used. AI should make our work easier. It should not be confusing at any time. No one should be confused by it. And it's not really measured by like how smart the system is, but it's measured by how much value people actually get from using it.
Yeah, no, that's right on. Let's talk a little bit about what VGM is doing, just to kind of put it out there. How do you prepare leaders and employees for AI adoption here?
Yeah, there's lots of things, but first, when I try and start by removing the mystery. I think people need to feel safe asking basic questions. I like to me there is no dumb question. I'm an educator. I come from an education background and questions just make trainings better. When I do my trainings, I always start with the history of AI. And I think people when they learn like the first successful AI program was written in 1951, that always surprises them and they're like, AI's been around that long. And then I start putting up examples of how we've been using AI for years and years and years. It tends to lessen their anxiety around using it. So we've been using it in the form of like unlocking our phones with Face ID. That's not new. That's, people think AI started in November of 2022 and when ChatGPT was released by OpenAI, but we've been using it on spell check, tab to fill. Google Maps is another one. Our Siri's, Alexas, any smart home device like your Ring, Nest, banking transactions when they find if there's a possible fraud, they notify you about it. Those are all AI driven. And even Amazon, like when it says, hey, you bought this, you might also like to buy this, or Netflix, you watch this, you should probably watch this. There was a research study done, and it was something like 80% of what we watch on Netflix is driven by AI recommendations. And I just think that's really funny. But focus on there's, no jargon, no like doom and gloom headlines. It's just practical, clear conversations that I try and have with employees. So I explain what AI is, but also what it isn't, and most importantly, like what it means for their day-to-day work. That's really where you're going to get buy-in and adoption is when people start realizing how it's going to make their day-to-day work easier. So if you're going to understand how to use a tool effectively, you have to understand how it works. And so a big part of my training is how AI is trained. That's the whole first part of it. Before you even get into prompt training and like workflow training, it's the history of and how AI is trained. And I think it helps build confidence when people understand it more. So a lot of my workshops are hands-on, where employees can have this safe space to practice with and kind of play with Copilot in our case at VGM, because it's not here to replace them. And we can get into that later because that's a whole nother conversation, but it's not there to replace them. It's there to kind of upgrade them or help them. And once people feel like that's trusted, I think it helps with adoption too.
Talk to me a little bit about your workshops and your training. How does that get facilitated across VGM? Is it the same per management team? Is it kind of people can come to you and use the training as they want it in their area, or how does that work?
When I train people, it's basically business units will come and they all have different needs. So like when I did AI training with insurance, it looked very different than when I did AI training with human resources. We worked a lot about prompts and creation of material and human resources. When I did AI training with accounting, we spent a lot of time in Excel and how to use Copilot within Excel, because that's the reality of their daily lives. But other than that, everybody that is like a new user gets a new license here at VGM. I put into a kind of an intro. It's called AI Unwrapped, and it's kind of what I had already described. It's the how AI is trained, the history of it, the biases that it inherently has, that the ethics that we need to use around responsible use. Protecting our company is a big part of that training. And then from there, it's based around business unit needs and specifically what prompts are going to be helpful to them, what workflow is going to be helpful to them. And we have a governance committee too here that we started. So we have an AI tactical committee that serves as kind of the front door for automation ideas and like vendor tools. And that committee that I'm on like performs kind of compliance and security pre-checks, and then we organize material to send forward to our governance review. And then from there, it kind of coordinates intake procedures. So tracking requests within our company, drafting recommendation packets. It kind of acts as the intake and review body. And then once it goes to governance, we look at like the formal risks, policy, ethics, and that committee that I'm involved in issues like final approval and decisions. And it sets enterprise rules for responsible use. So once a new AI tool is introduced or considered part of VGM, then we pivot our training based on that tool as well.
Oh, awesome. Talk to me a little about who is on that governance committee. Like what roles? Not the people, but different
Yeah, so well,
roles.
we have security people on there, we have compliance people on there, we have people from corporate IT on there, and then learning and development.
Awesome. Well, let's get back to that topic. You briefly mentioned about the worry. And, let's be honest, some employees do worry that AI will replace their jobs in some way, shape, or form. How do you address those concerns specifically?
Yeah, I probably hear that more than anything. I mean, it is probably the number one worry, but I always joke with them like if AI could actually compete with us and replace humans, it would figure out how to schedule a meeting without sending 47 emails to schedule that meeting. Humans are safe when it comes to that so far, but it's like a power tool. It can help you build faster and better, but it's not going to turn you into a carpenter, right? Like we still need humans for skill, safety, supervision. I mean, all that still matters. Plus, that the touch points that we have with our customers, like AI is not going to replicate that or replace us in that way. So the first thing I do is acknowledge the fear You have to acknowledge it and honor that they have that, acknowledge the fear of change, and then redirect it and kind of emphasize that it's a partnership with technology and it's not a replacement. I often use like the Ford assembly line as an example of this, in that, when Henry Ford invented the assembly line in 1930, they went from 12 hours to build a car to 1.5 hours because of automation, and it drastically reduced the cost of those cars from $950 to $290 per car. So did it replace some jobs? It kind of switched what people did. So when we're looking at assembly lines now with robots, we're looking at, we need people to maintain and repair the systems. We need robots to be calibrated, and they have to have humans to keep them running smoothly. There's got to be technicians and coders and machine operators and supervisors. I mean, it kind of just augments the role that they had. So it's where it's going to replace some jobs, it'll shift other jobs into new roles. But definitely just kind of honoring that fear, and helping people understand that AI is a tool that's created by humans, and it can reflect those human biases or limitations. So we still need people to like critically evaluate any AI generated information and not just rely on it for like indisputable facts. It's not safe to do that.
I've definitely heard from people reviewing, work by AI and then being like, well, it's wrong. It's wrong. We can't trust it. It's wrong. This is stupid. We shouldn't be using it. And not really taking that perspective of, yep, it's going to be wrong. Humans are wrong too. And that's why we double check work. And so it is not perfect, but it can help us be more efficient. And we still need that human to check it.
Yeah, that makes me think of this quote by Daniel Golovetsky. He said, "Learn how to think with AI, not just think about it." And I think that is a really good kind of reminder that when you're using it, it will hallucinate, which is just misinformation. Is what AI calls misinformation. The quality of your prompt will help with that. So if you ask your I need you to check your sources, and I want you to think through this process, and I don't want you to answer until all sources are validated, and you actually put that as part of your prompt, you will get a more accurate return out of it. So you need to talk to it like you would talk to someone else that you were asking to research something, and it will change what it returns to you.
That's awesome. Yeah, prompting is a whole other art. I do think that it's something that now people are starting to see, oh, there is an art to this. Talk to me a little bit about your prompting training.
Well, again, it's really based on the business unit that comes to me for that training. So I
Yeah.
always differentiate it and make it really unique to who I'm training. I was at a Gartner IT symposium in October, and they came away with this idea that we shouldn't be calling it prompt engineering anymore. We should be calling it context engineering, which I thought was really interesting. It's a very subtle difference, but it's an important one to make. And I still personally call it prompt engineering. But I also have brought in this idea to my training since then about why they call it context engineering and why that's important. Because without context in AI, is like if you just walk up to someone on the street and ask them a question, whatever you get is what you're going to get, right? It may be right, it may be wrong. But if you give people context about what you're looking for, it's going to be more accurate. I had someone here who was not a fan of AI. They weren't going to use it, and they asked me to sit with them after a intro to AI training that I did with them, and they wanted to create an SOP using Copilot. And I sat with them for a couple hours, and we really worked through like what a good quality prompt looks like. And the before and after was like so stark that they started building like a prompt library for their team, and really got into it. And I recently got a message from her is like, oh, AI is my best friend now. So that was definitely a win that she was able to kind of understand it. But again, it was about getting to trust it and understand how it works. Once employees see that their workflow is changing and becoming more efficient, and the quality of it, that pretty much gets people to adopt it pretty quickly.
Are you seeing that same kind of change management curve in terms of you get those early adopters and you get those on board and you make sure that they become your ambassadors so that way it can go down the line of those that are maybe more skeptical? Are you seeing that same thing in your trainings? or something else?
No, I think it's definitely important when you're in trainings that you identify, kind of the people that are naturally going to gravitate toward that, maybe have a little better understanding of tech. And then you're like, hey, this is your person that you can go. I mean, outside of me, of course, I'm always available for questions, but this is a person on your team that's going to be kind of the SME and what you do. If you have a question about how to upgrade your prompt, like go to them because they're going to be able to help you. And it helps bring, I think, teams together and trust also, being that they see their coworkers, the people sitting right, to the left or right of them, working on it, and how much time it's saving them. And I think that really helps too. Yeah, the early adopters for sure. When you're talking about like enterprise wide, you have to you have to go in and scale how you do it, and you have to kind of build a small team at first to become kind of your ambassadors. But it also allows you to identify security issues when you work small before you roll it out to an entire organization. So
What's your advice for managers? So even at that level, there's some of the people that aren't the early adapters that maybe don't fully embrace what's happening or are kind of scared. What's your advice to managers, A, to just get themselves up to speed on not just Chat GPT or Copilot, knowing that those are some of the maybe daily tools that people use, but enterprise wide, what are the tools that that division's using, how they're using them, and then once they're comfortable, how to cascade that down to their team. What would your advice be there?
honestly, when I do business unit trainings, a lot of them have been with the leadership of teams to start with. And so it's I'll do like accounting here is a good example of that. Accounting leadership team came in and we did a co-pilot training, and it really helped them to kind of identify what is going to be work best for them as a team. And then from there they can kind of put their fingers out and reach out to, their reports that are going to be using it as well. It's important for managers to be in those trainings so that they can hear, a frontline worker what their fears are, or what their concerns are, or what their successes have been using it. I think that's a big part of it. They can't, you know, exclude themselves from that. And of course modeling it,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Modeling it and showing that it
Yeah.
that it can increase efficiency in your job and save you a lot of time on routine, repetitive tasks that no one really likes to do anyway, right? And then you have more time for,
Right.
strategic thinking and relationship building and analyzing data. So it's important for everyone to see our leaders using it as well.
Yeah, for sure. Let's put on the HME provider lens for a second. And we know that staffing, especially in the past 5 years, has been challenging and tough to get the right staff in place, the right clinical staff in place. The industry as a whole, or the market as a whole, is growing because the aging population grows every year. So what do you see as the opportunities in HME for providers to capitalize on these technologies, knowing that staffing is a challenge, and how to really capture the best value, or the gold that is an employee? We want to use them for those gold type tasks, whether it's a face to face something with a customer, or something very clinical with a patient, whatever that might be. Just tell me about what you see in that space specifically, how providers can leverage these tools, and also change management and leading people to do those like gold type tasks, if you will.
Yeah, well, I mean, change management is a big part of this. When I do change management trainings, I often hear people be like, "I don't like change," and I like to use this example. It's not the change that people resist. I mean, like if I gave you $1 million today, Lindy, would you be like, "Nope, I don't want it. That's too. That's going to change my life. I don't want that." Right? No one would do that. It's really not the change. It's the loss in a change, and it could be the loss of they feel like they are the subject matter expert in Excel and formulas, and now nobody needs them anymore because you can just use Copilot for that, right? You don't have to. The days of memorizing formulas in Excel are gone. You don't need to anymore. And so it could be the loss of this identity that they have. It could be the loss, the fear of a loss of a job that they love. But I think specifically within like staffing shortages, this is a real opportunity to show how you can really upscale, someone to do more work with less effort. And when I've been to speak like at association conferences, there's one in particular. There was a guy from a medical group there, and he was hitting me pretty hard with questions. I could tell that he was a skeptic of AI, and he came up to me afterwards, and we had a pretty lengthy conversation about AI and where it's going into the future and how it could be used in his business. And I'm like, hey, I want you to talk to Nick Diedrichson here at Forbin, and he met with him, and now they've signed on, and he is full on with Copilot licenses and moving forward, and it's really changing the scope and scale of what they're able to do in their little business. So it was pretty cool to see.
That's awesome. So, but let's get as real as we can because that's what this unfilter is all about. As you look ahead, I have two questions in this. The biggest opportunities that you see with AI in the workplace and then also the biggest challenges.
Yeah. Well, I think opportunities are endless. Looking forward, I see the AI in the workplace. I think it can dramatically improve productivity. It already has by automating those repetitive tasks and freeing employees to focus on like higher value work. And like I mentioned, like strategic decision making, creativity, relationship building, those are all things that can fall away when you're doing these repetitive tasks day in and day out. Engagement goes up, just employee retention goes up when you can get rid of some of those things that are kind of soul sucking. Second, I think AI can personalize learning and development and tailor training to, and this is from my lens, of course, as an L&D person, but tailoring training to individual needs and career paths, which is a game changer for employees, growth, because you can really get in and individualize, needs for them. It can also predict trends and even, help leaders make better decisions. As far as challenges, I think opportunities are endless. I think challenges are also endless. I think the biggest one is trust. I think people need to trust the tech. They need to trust the data and the intention behind it and do their due diligence and make sure that it's accurate. But I think employees need to feel confident that AI is for the most part accurate, that it's ethical, that it's secure. The human factor, that resistance to change that we've brought up a couple of times, and the fear of job displacement, I think has to be addressed, very openly and transparently. I think organizations are going to need a strong communication plan, really clear policies, and then ongoing education to support people to ensure that AI is seen as a partner and not as a threat. And I think, as far as like ethics go, you've got to set guardrails. You can put your organization at risk if you don't. So I think that's another challenge. Change fatigue is a challenge. People are already overwhelmed by constant updates, and AI is moving so quickly that sometimes there's not really a clear roadmap that an organization can point to. I mean, I always think about the statistic. It took, the internet 7 years to reach 100 million users, and it took ChatGPT 2 months. And so it's moving exponentially fast, and sometimes it can feel like it's just one more wave in a storm, right? That it's just one more thing we have to learn. But if you think back on, when Google came out and people were like, well, how are we going to teach kids to look up words in a dictionary or an encyclopedia? And like, they're going to be dumbed down, and we're all just fine, right? We're all fine. We're all better for Google and having, kind of the world's information at our fingertips. I think AI will become like that. I understand the fear around it, but keeping people's expectations and anxiety low, and just like, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future, what it's going to look like. Right now, the biggest challenge is probably just around trust and adoption.
So, before we close, I failed to give you the opportunity to speak about yourself and your background. So, you've been at VGM for a year and a half, but tell us your education background and what you were doing up to this point because it's very interesting and I should have done it at the beginning, but again, we're real. We're doing this off the cuff, and I thought about that a few questions ago, but I would love for you to just Tell us a little bit about your background, where you came from, and then a little bit about yourself personally. I would love to be able to close out with that.
Oh, this is the hardest question, Lindy. At
Yes.
all. But I've been at VGM a year and a half, well, a little more than that. And I came from an education background. So I was working just previously to this at the AEA. I worked for Central Rivers and I was an instructional technology consultant for them. So I have a master's in education and I have a graduate level, like master's level endorsement in computer science as well. So when I came on here, it seemed like a natural fit. Obviously, L&D was going to be my world, but I really leaned into AI because I had been already training school districts. I had 72 school districts that I was consulting for at the time. So I was doing, from December of 2022. And then certainly January of 2023, when teachers came back, it was like the wild, wild west because kids knew all about ChatGPT and teachers, a lot didn't at that time. So they were getting these, beautifully written essays that, from a student that previously, had, written a paragraph and they were like, what is going on? So we had to really scale up those trainings and quickly. So I feel very, very confident and comfortable coming into that role here at VGM too, taking on the AI learning and development.
What a change in education, though. What a change in the school landscape.
Yeah, it was very funny and working with districts around policies because the policies hadn't really matched, especially when it came to like, intellectual dishonesty versus, just plagiarism, right? Because it's different and so school districts had to pivot really quickly and come up with some new policies. So but yeah, it was interesting. It was an interesting time to be in education during that time and be able to see it from kind of every angle. And I think it's made me a better educator when it comes to technology because of that. Personally, I am a mom. I have three boys. They're all adults, or at least, in theory, adults. But one works here. He's a software engineer, corp IT. And then my middle son is a forester. He graduated from Iowa State with forestry and lives in Wisconsin, so he's a big Packers fan now. And then my youngest is actuarial science student at UNI, and I'm currently living at home trying to get the little birdie to fly.
You've made a huge difference, I know, in our journey here at VGM when it comes to AI, and then at the leader standpoint, and then down to the employee standpoint, and which is why I wanted to bring you on because it's something that isn't easy. The people side of anything isn't easy. I have learned that in my years as both a leader and a parent. So then to have this new frontier, outside of what we've learned from Google or Amazon or, the .com boom or iPhones even. It's a
Right.
new frontier really for businesses. And then especially you add in healthcare and HME, it's tended to lag behind in technology, and all of a sudden we're quickly catching up across the board. And so bringing people alongside for that is probably it's the hardest piece, which is why we're talking about it. And I love that you bring that educator and then education perspective to the table because we wouldn't have that otherwise.
Thank you. That's all wonderful to say. It is absolutely my passion. So when I can combine these two things, I am like, I'm here until they throw me out.
I love it. I love it. How do you use AI in your life
Oh
personally?
gosh. So I mean, so much. Definitely when I'm creating content for business units, I'll use AI to make it really differentiated for them. I use
Yeah.
it, I mean, more than just crafting emails, but that's certainly a part of it. When I need to sound a little softer or I need to sound a little more relaxed, it's easy to put, your email into Copilot and put your tone. I use it definitely for research. So Copilot has an agent, a research agent that is fantastic. I don't even get me started on agents because I will talk forever about them. But it's
We'll have to do a separate
I
episode on
it's
agents.
yes, they're wonderful. They're so fun.
We'll do it.
But
Okay.
that's another way that I use it personally. I mean, I use it to look up phone numbers now. I use it to find, businesses if I'm traveling somewhere, to find places to eat. Um, I've used it to, have, a conversation with my son about something that was, kind of uncomfortable conversation, I guess. I used it as, for advice on that. So yeah, I mean, I've used it all pretty much every way that you can. I've used it, but yeah, it's made my life, especially as an L&D specialist, and it being that in creating really individualized learning paths for people. It's really been helpful for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, for sure. Talking to my children that don't have their frontal lobes fully developed, it has really helped me validate feelings, soften a text. I go straight to problem solving, and it helps me immensely in my communication with my
It's so funny
kids.
you'd say that because I just was talking to someone yesterday and they're like, I was describing, they're like, oh, so, frontal lobes haven't developed all the way yet. I'm like, no, not yet. I'm like, when does that
No,
happen? They're like,
no.
25. I'm like, ooh, okay, got some time.
Yeah, yeah. Got some time to go. And just thank you again. Thank you for sharing your insights and kind of your secret sauce into how we're doing training here for our leaders and for our people here at VGM. And just know that Anne's a resource that we have for members. If you want to reach out, go to our website and you can fill out the contact form, but we can help get you plugged into any of the answers that we may have for your questions when it comes to the people side of AI. For our listeners, just remembering that is powerful, but it's really about people at the end of the day. So stay curious, stay connected, lead with empathy. And until next time, this is Industry Matters. I am Unfiltered, and thank you for joining us.